Okay, let's get started. And we're going to start with a question from the audience of what's my forecast for small business in 2024 and going forward? I think that there are over 30 million small businesses in the United States. There's about 3 million that are started annually, and the numbers are picking up. One thing that's clear and that's been happening over the last few years is the percentage of Hispanic businesses is a lot higher than the non-Hispanic businesses. So again, I see a pickup in small business startups and growth, and especially in the bilingual Hispanic owned opportunity. One other thing is that there's a new tax law that all of your employees, your household employees, your lawn employees, and so forth are. Oops, we have sounds in the background. So, but all of the employees are going to be getting 1099s, and they're going to have to declare them on their tax return. So those people are going to be full-fledged self-employed individuals. So they're going to be able to, of course, if they haven't been claiming that revenue, they're going to have to file a Schedule C with the return that will take expenses because they're all having expenses. It could be car expense, could be office and home expense, supplies, et cetera, et cetera. They're all having expenses that they're going to be able to deduct. So that will increase the trend of small businesses. There'll be a lot more people filing tax returns with small business on the return. That's also good news for the taxpayers because that's going to drive a lot of people into assisted tax preparation. Most self-employed individuals, most people that have self-employment income pay someone a lot higher percent pay a preparer than people that don't have self-employment income. Next topic for today, I started last week and someone asked me, and this has got to be one of the top 5 questions I've ever been asked, and maybe top number 1 question that I am asked, and it's regarding my success. People, what's the number 1 attribute? What's the number 1 reason that you've been so successful? And I've been incredibly successful. I've one of only less than 50 people in the history of the United States to be named as Entrepreneur of the Year by the International Franchise Association. I founded a $1 billion company in Jackson Hewitt, and less than 10,000 people in the United States have ever founded a $1 billion company. I founded 2 of the top 100 retail chains in the country. No one else has ever done that. And I brought in 5,200 franchisees. There may be someone else that's done that. I don't know them, but that's a rarefied air. So I've been incredibly successful, incredibly blessed, and I'm going to save the number 1 reason that I said last week, and that I think is the most important attribute of success, of incredible success, and until last. But last week I said, I love top 10 lists, and I love the because top 10 commandments in the Bible. I mean, we have top 10 lists for all kinds of parts of our organization. So each of our franchise systems has a top 10. And but one of our systems has 12. And I thought that I could deviate from 10 because the Big Ten in football has more than 10 teams. I think last I heard they're up to 13 or 14 teams. So some of them have more than 10, but we always call it top 10. And when I said that off the cuff last week, that I'm going to come up with a top 10 because there isn't just one key attribute that bring someone to immense success. There's a bunch of things, and I thought, well, off the top of my head, I'll come up with 5 or 6, and then I'll have to stretch to get the others. Well, I sat down the next morning, and in 5 minutes, I listed exactly 10 things, and then in the last couple of days, I've come up with 2 more. So I like some audience participation. I'm going to go through the top 10, and either during my presentation or afterwards. I love it if you had any advice on how to modify it to get to an actual what are the top 10. So I'm going to give you 11 or 12 today, and love your input and thoughts on how accurate it is, and you can help me make it better. And to get better, you have to improve. And for example, in our mission statement, I love the mission statement of our company, and it's having fun, improving lives. And however, when we started, it was having fun changing lives. And one of our staff eventually came forward and said, wait a minute, you could change lives for the negative. So don't you mean to improve lives? And so we're always changing, we're always improving. Our goal is to always have the best system in each of our industries, and to have the best system, it has to be improving. So that's number one, is improvement. You have to be committed to improvement, and improvement is a lot easier if you are criticized. It's hard for someone to have all yes men or women, and to improve. It's a lot easier if you get criticism. And having had 5,200 franchisees and 6 children, and I've taken a lot of criticism. To improve, it's so much easier if you embrace criticism. And one of my philosophies is that, and I've always had a lot of smart people in my business career, either peers or employees or franchisees that are knowledgeable and thoughtful, and put a lot of thought into this industry. And my belief is that if I disagree with someone, a smart person, that about a certain philosophy in business or strategy, then neither one of us is 100% right. Their answer might be, I might be 5% right, and or maybe 95% right. It might be 50-50, but you always need to listen. And so number one is a commitment to improvement. Number two is listen. That good advice comes from the oddest sources, from the best person in your organization, and the worst person in your organization. So, and there's always a best and a worst, and hopefully the worst is pretty good and the best is a lot better. But you need to be committed to listen. What we did, and we started this at over 30 years ago when we were at Jackson Hewitt, and during the convention, we break into groups, and we said, tell us how to improve our tax software. Tell us how to improve our tax support. Tell us how to improve our technical support. Tell us how to improve our marketing. And so we had groups we would break into large groups, because there was hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people coming to convention. So there'd be rooms full of 100 or 200 people. And we'd write down every idea. There was no idea that was just discarded out of hand. We wrote down everything. And then at the end of after the convention, we would sit down, the management team and representative franchises would sit down, and we would decide, and they would fall into three main categories. One is we're never going to change it. Two is we're going to change it, but we don't have, not this year, we don't have the resources or time, or it's not that sensitive that needs to be done right now. Or thirdly, we need to change it this year. And I'm proud to say that over the 30 years I've been doing that, every year, most of the ideas are changed that year. And I believe that, well, I know the big picture. I'm the self-proclaimed great granddaddy of taxes. Well, I know the big picture better than anyone. I don't deal with customers. And my franchisees and their taxpayers and themselves, they deal with customers, and they know what customers want. And those things are changing over the last, certainly over the last 55 years. I just completed my 55th tax season last week. But things change, and customers want different services, and you're not evaluated anymore. And if you ever were, you're not evaluated just by your competitors. You're evaluated by every customer experience that you have. And so listening is a vital uh, responsibility of massive success. And part of that listening is making everyone understand that you are listening. One of my weaknesses is that I don't do a good job of always do a good job of making it appear to the speaker that I've heard them. I may be brusque, or tend to seem to brush it off, or interrupt and correct them, or finish the sentence for them. So you have to be thoughtful and communicate more effectively, and make sure you understand and let the speaker know that you've heard them. So that's two: improvement and listening. Thirdly, you have to have vision. You have to see what's happening in the industry, what's happening in the country economically. You have to have your pulse of the economy, the industry, and know where it's going. And there have been significant changes in taxes over the years. And I just described one that's going to be very beneficial for all tax preparers in the next year or two. This requirement of claiming income that many people never claimed before. It's going to go on their tax return, and along with the expenses that go towards it. That's a big change that's going to drive more people to prepare. So we need to be ready for that, and we need to market that properly. We need to be the communicators of that to our customers, for sure, and attract new customers by doing that. So you have to have a vision that's fairly accurate. What I've done in the past in all of my companies is we sit down and we talk about where we're going to be in 5 years, and that includes number of offices, number of amount of system-wide revenue, number of franchisees, et cetera, et cetera. And so first we spend about half hour or an hour on the long-term vision, because long-term visions tend to be so inaccurate, right? It's tough enough to budget and vision correctly for 1 year, let alone for 5 years. So we set our 5-year goals and in terms of where we want to be, and then we'll spend twice that amount of time on our 3-year plan. So if we're gonna be at 6,000 offices in 5 years, and we have 4,000 offices today, how many do we have to have in 3 years? And so we then spend about twice as much time on the shorter term. Okay, if we're going to make that 5-year goal. We're only going to get there if we have X number. We're not going to go 0, 0, 0, 0, and then jump to a 50% increase in locations. So what does the path look like? And then finally, we spend most of the time on 12 months. And okay, so if we're going to have 6,000 offices in 5 years and 5,000 offices in 3 years, and we have 4,000 offices today, we're going to need to have X number of offices. Well, if we're going to have X number of offices, that's going to create X amount of revenue. It's going to require X amount of people to be trained. It's going to require X amount of advertising to bring in the new franchisees, and then to bring in the customers for the franchisees. So all of that has to be planned. And frankly, people waste too much time, I believe, on the budget process. Because almost no one gets budgets right. I follow the stock market, of course, and it's very, very rare that even the largest companies in the world, the Apple or Amazon or the Walmart, they miss their numbers all the time, up or down. And they having had 2 public companies, you spend a lot of time with the analysts who ask you questions, and you have to be totally honest with them. And they have a lot of information, and they're not accurate at predicting even the 1 year. So I see people wasting too much time on budgeting. My general philosophy on budgeting is, if I'm budgeting for a small business, let's say that the small business this year had revenue they were growing pretty rapidly. They grew from 300,000 of revenue to let's say they go from 250 to 500,000. So they doubled, and they're growing very rapidly, and very excited. So when we sit down to budget for next year, my philosophy is you take the worst case and the best case. So because you can never plan on all the contingencies and bad things that could happen and good things that could happen. And so let's say in that case, they had gone from 250 to 500,000. And now we say, okay, everything goes wrong. We only do 600,000. Everything goes right. We double again and go to $1 million. So I prepare 2 budgets. One is a $600,000 budget, and then $1 million budget. And then I prepare the real budget. And the real budget is in my philosophy, is 60% of the way between best and worst. So if you take $1 million, subtract 600,000, 60% of that is the 400,000 is 240,000. So I add 240,000 to the 600 worst case, and I budget 840. And the reason I don't take just the worst case is, if I take just the worst case, and then I won't have spent enough money or employed enough structure to be able to meet the best case. So I'll never be able to do $1 million if I only budget and spend for 600,000. So, but on the other hand, if I budget for $1 million, then I could be overexpended, because I might get to just 600,000. And boy, I have blown a lot of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars by planning on $1 million and only doing 600,000. I'll have overhired, spent too much in advertising, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the reason that I'm a bit positive. I'm going to take the positive side. I'm an optimist, and I'm going to budget the 840, and that allows me the flexibility to adjust my spending, adjust my hiring during the year to be able to handle either best case or worst case. But the budgeting process, wow, it's just wasteful to see how much time people spend on it. And I can do a budget on back of a napkin, and I'm a mathematician, in about an hour, and hand it to one of my franchisees, and it's going to be pretty accurate. Over there, they may be spending a day or two, and just they may be, oh no, the rent might be 1,500 or 1,700. Oh, so they just get locked in to too much information and not moving forward and start. I mean, doing a budget is a nice tool, but it's only a tool in growth. Delegation is one of the biggest diseases in management that I've run into in my life, and a good example of that is in all the 5,200 franchisees I brought in, at least 90% or 95% of them want to have more than one office. And what I've seen is that when you go from one office to two offices to three to four to five, it's that second office that illuminates their inability to delegate. If you can run two offices, I've seen you can run 10, but it's the difference between one office and two offices. And the way I think of it is that some people can't delegate unless the people they're delegating to are in sight and under their thumb. One of my favorite delegating instructions that I did help one of my managers long ago, was about 1989 at Jackson Hewitt, and she just couldn't delegate, and she was in charge of our technical support team, and we were pretty small back in 1989. We only had about 300 offices, and so our facilities were pretty small, and the technical support was close to my office, and that's where the copy machines were. And while I had lectured her a couple of times during her evaluation or performance evaluation, I had talked to her about delegating and her inability to delegate, and it didn't get through to her until this event happened. I needed something copied. So whatever it was, I took a document with like 30 pages, and I took it towards the copy machine, looking for someone to copy it for me. Because again, that's, if I'm CEO of a huge company, right, that I shouldn't be making my own copies. So I arrived into her domain, and she had about 7 employees working, and she was at the copy machine making copies. So I went over to one of the people that was sitting at a desk, and I handed them my things that I need copied. And I said, I need this copied as soon as possible. So the person got up and went over to the manager, who was before that unable to delegate, and said, excuse me, John needs these as soon as possible. And so he moves her out of the way and made my copies for me. And I left, and he brought him to my office, which is only 100 feet away. And from then on, she could delegate. She saw, I mean, it hit home with her that why is she standing at the copy machine when that employee could have been making copies for her, same employee that was making copies for me. She went on and left after she went on to become a vice president at a large, when she left Jackson Hewitt a couple years later, or no, many years later, it was about, I guess, 8 or 10 years later, she went on to become a vice president of a large franchise chain, and a very successful career. But she didn't learn, and it's so hard to teach delegation, and there are so many excuses for it. And I'll say this: the most important part of delegation is follow up, measuring your expectations, inspecting your expectations. It's easy to give instructions. It's so easy to give instructions. It's so hard for the other person to understand the instructions explicitly. And that's the key, is not telling people what to do. It's setting an expectation and then following up. And I like to, I'm communication is not one of my biggest strengths, and by far. And so what I like to do is, if I have a project that requires things done 100 times, that I say, after you've done 5 or 10, bring me the results and then see if we're on the same page. And most of the time, or much of the time, there's something we both learned in those first 5 or 10 tries that I hadn't thought of, or the person hadn't thought of. And so the project was better off because we changed it on the fly based on making sure that the person understood what I meant, and or they come back and with improvements. So that delegation, proper delegation, is again one of the biggest 10 for doing great things. Next, it's doing what's best for people. And part of that is listening to what's best for them. But I always want what's best for the other person. There's so many leaders that, and I'll run into this in the franchise system, where we have an opportunity for employees of franchisees to become franchises. And we even offer them, if they're proven, special financing and special help to have them acquire their own franchise. Well, many of our franchisees would hide their employees from us so that they didn't go and become franchisees, because they wanted them as their own employees. And that is so wrong, to hold back other human beings from being all they can be selfishly because you want them to do work for you. And of course you want them as employees, but the best employees are employees that, and the best leaders are leaders that find their replacement, that nurture and develop and present opportunities for all that you can be. So one of the greatest attributes that has propelled me to what the heights I've achieved are that I always want what's best for the other person, and that is such a rewarding thing. Next, integrity. I learned a valuable lesson in integrity when one of the people, after I left Jackson Hewitt, one of my franchisees, one of my best friends from college, he was a professor before I helped him become a franchisee and become incredibly successful as a Jackson Hewitt franchisee. But he went to the convention and made notes after the CEO spoke at the convention. And he said he got standing ovation after standing ovation. And he made notes, and he told me exactly what he said. And as he was talking, I got so excited. Emotionally, I said, boy, I should buy a franchise of this. This sounds fantastic. This is my own company, Jackson Hewitt, which I'd already sold. And I learned a valuable lesson in integrity versus honesty. And honesty, to me, comes down to two key words. Honesty is past, and integrity is future. Honesty is talking about the past and telling the truth about the past. Integrity is, I say that I'm going to do something, and then I do it. And success in life is mostly that simple. It's just doing what you say you're going to do. And out of all the people I've ever met, not 10%, probably not 5%, maybe not 2%, do what they say they're going to do. So integrity and doing what you say you're going to do is incredibly important. And in the journey. Next, hard work. I don't believe that there's any way to have massive success without hard work. I think when I study the successes in every industry, including sports, the superstars, the winners, they outwork, they out hustle, they outperform. The lesser competition. It's Vince Lombardi said that success isn't the result of anything but hard work. And he said, whoever works the hardest, right? He said they said that winning isn't everything; it's the only thing. But he said, no, hard work isn't everything; it's the only thing. And to have that's key to everything is you have to outwork, out hustle, outthink your competitor. And so there's no one I've ever seen that achieved greatness that it didn't require hard work. Next is attitude. And I had a great, I love this. I love, I guess I'll tell that story in a minute with another one of my things. But Tom Watson Sr., the one of the founders of IBM, said, give me 100 people with great attitude and or 100 great engineers. I'll take the people with great attitude, because you can teach engineering. You can't teach attitude. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I've made in my career, is trying to change people's attitude, and never been able to do it. I've changed their attitudes for a minute, a week, a month, but they'll go right back to the attitude they have. And attitude is an incredible, important part of building culture. The greatest companies, the greatest successes have a culture that's above their competitors. A culture that is people are allowed to speak out. They're happier than their competitors. You know, I often wondered years ago the difference between the leaders of Kmart and Walmart. Were the leaders at Walmart, were they smarter? Were they more experienced? Were they more educated? And I said, no, you can hire the smartest, the most educated, most experienced. It's not that at all. What is it? It's the attitude. It's the culture. And Herb Kelleher, who wrote the book Nuts about the development of Southwest Airlines, said, if you want your customers to be treated as number one, you need to teach your employees as number one. So treating employees is the key to having happy, successful customers. So if you want happy customers, you have to start with happy employees. Happy employees bring an attitude of a positive attitude to the situation. And that's critical, because you're going to be faced with adversity if not daily, weekly, or monthly. You're going to run into crisis situation, and stuff happens, and it's how it affects you, not whether it happens or not, because bad stuff is going to happen. So it isn't a matter of avoiding bad things that are going to happen. It's a matter of having the right attitude, and making it through, and facing it with a positive attitude. You know, one of our principles, our principle number 10 in our top 10 list of principles, is just say yes. Just say yes, and try to think of a way to do it in a positive way. You know, for example, one of a situation, one of the greatest franchisees most successful ever, he came to me and to override a decision that had been made by lower level people. And what had happened is he had acquired 5 territories, and they had no offices in them. And he opened one office the first year and a second office the second year. And he had a 5-year plan that he was going to develop one office per year over 5 years. Well, after the second season, a franchisee nearby who was an incredibly poor performer that was about 10 miles away or 10 or 15 miles away had 2 offices that were for sale. And he asked to be able to buy those 2 offices because that was even a better, more vibrant territories than he had in his 5 territories. And so the support person he talked to said, no, our policy is that you have to continue to grow your territories out before you can expand. And so they were going to have him only have the 3rd office in the first 5 available locations and let those 2 offices go to someone else. So that's I intervened and said, what a great idea. I mean, we have a great operator who's willing to take over these rundown offices and grow them and expand them. We can always open that new office the next year. I mean, if you take an office, a couple offices that are underperforming, if you think of the impact to our system of getting them to perform well and doubling it to existing offices versus one startup, the impact on the company is a lot greater, right? But the employee couldn't see past the policy of no, you have to. It wasn't thoughtful. If he had done the numbers, let's say that I'll give you some numbers. For example, let's say that the existing offices that he was purchasing were doing so poorly. They were only doing 400 tax returns each, and they should have been doing thousands each. And a new office back then would start at about 300 returns. So, okay, if he goes to a new territory and opens a new office, he can bring in 300 new customers to the company. But if he takes these 2 400 return offices and doubles them, then he's going to have 400 plus 400. He's going to have 800 new customers versus the 300 he would have by opening a brand new office. Plus, he'll solve the problem of any customer dissatisfaction from prior years. So we're going to have a net gain of over 500 customers. We're going to have 2 high quality offices versus 2 underperforming offices, and we'll just have to wait 1 year to develop that other office. And it turned out just as it sounded. He actually went on to become the 2nd largest franchise in the system, doing over 15,000 tax returns and with revenue of over $5 million. So he became very, very successful. And it was just say yes, find out a way to say yes. And another example is that we had a special that franchisees could expand, acquire an expansion territory with special price, special funding. They could open for 1 year that summer. They could acquire anyone in the system that was in compliance could get another office. Well, someone came to them and said, no, can I do 2 offices? And the blanket answer was from the employee was, the rule is no. The policy is only 1. And that was the right answer, except for he could have learned to say yes, and he could have learned to say no by saying yes. And what the only reason he shouldn't do 2 offices was he needed either money or people, because those are the two things you need to expand. You need money and people. And so he should have said, we will let you open 2 offices under the program if you show us X amount of dollars and X amount of people. And then that, because we want to do what's best for you. And if you're understaffed and or undercapitalized, it's not good for you to open 2 offices. We want you to do what's best for you. What's best for you is make sure you have the proper capital and employees, and management to be able to open 2 offices in 1 year. So learn to say yes, and even though the person would never be able to do that, so that they're making the decision themselves. If you say you need to show me $50,000 and a manager, then by all means you can go to a second. You can do 2. Then it would have been up to them, because they didn't and wouldn't be able to do that. So it wasn't us saying no. It was us trying to help them be all that they can be, do the right thing for them, and show them what the resources they need to do that. Next, systemic. And you have to create systems to solve everyday problems. And what I call it is, my phrase is tip of the iceberg. When a problem develops, you have to make a decision. Is that a problem? I mean, especially in my systems, right? We had thousands of franchisees. So if we got a complaint or a inquiry for help, and you have to decide, is this just a one-off situation, that this is only happened to this person? There was a tornado and it blew the office away. Well, you don't create systems, and we had that. We've lost offices in tornadoes, in hurricanes, in floods. We've lost offices before, but you don't create systems of what to do in case of a nuclear war, right? I mean, you create systems for things that are going to happen over and over again. And so you have to create greatness, you have to solve problems in advance. You can't sit there, and systemization and systemic, that's what it is. It's creating the future, and as opposed to problem solving, continuing to fight fires. So if you're continuing to fight the same fires, boy, something's wrong. It's a training issue, it's a system issue, it's a supply issue. You should not be fighting the same fires over and over again. So whenever there's a problem or an opportunity, and we talked about that earlier in taking advice from franchisees on how to improve the system, you have to decide when someone creates a situation, or here's the problem and here's the solution. You have to decide, if it applies to dozens of franchises, then you need a system. If it applies to one, then you don't need a system. It's not black and white on how many it applies to, but certainly somewhere in the dozens, definitely in the hundreds. If they're all going to face the same issue, then you need to set up a system in advance to solve the problem. And one example I'll give you is a franchisee called up on in April, or he sent me a nasty email, and he, on April 15th, he had got a call from the television station they were going to come out to his office. So it was April 15th, and he called marketing support for advice on how to handle the television situation. And no one was there. He couldn't get through to anyone. So he was so mad and so upset. And so I went to our operations team and training team and said, how many of our, and by then we had we had thousands of offices. I said, how many times are our offices going to be approached by an opportunity for an interview by TV or radio or newspaper? And of course, every TV station, every radio station, every newspaper during the tax season has something about tax during the year and during the tax season. And so I said, okay, is there anything in the operating manual on how to handle that? No, there wasn't. So, okay, this is something we need a system for. So we need to put a chapter in the operating manual on how to handle the press, tips on handling the press. And we also need to, during our training, either our basic training or intermediate training or advanced training of franchisees, or even our weekly phone calls during the year, or daily phone calls during the tax season. We need to have a training, a short training on do's and don'ts when the press comes to call. And so you need to create systems, and that's otherwise you can't scale. Without systems, you can't scale. So those are my first 10 that I came up with, and then over the last couple of days, I came up with a couple more. And again, at the end, send me your feedback if you have any changes or modifications. I'm happy to listen to them. But I may publish it with 12. The one that I invented the other day was, and this has to do with vision too, but drive. You have to be driven, right? There's no one when you're the boss and you're self-employed. There's no one telling you what to do or pushing you. So you got to be the person, and I love to hire people that are driven like myself, because I don't have enough energy to pull along all my staff. I love it when I have to hold them back, that they're driven, but drive is a key to winning, and part of that is a drive to excel. You know, when I started Jackson Hewitt in August of 1982, I had 6 offices, and H&R Block had 9,000. And you know what our goal was? And we went out and raised $129,000 to start Jackson Hewitt in August of 1982. Our goal was to have 9,001 offices. So I needed to add 8,995 offices. Who sets goals like that? That's crazy. So part of your vision has to be audacious. You have to set audacious goals. And most people that acquired a chain of 6 locations would set maybe a 3-year goal to have 10 or 12 or 14. We set a goal to have 9,000 locations. And our strategy from day one, of course, we computerized, and no one else was computerized, so gives a leg up. But our strategy was always to be number one, to be largest in the industry. And so that's part of the drive. You have to be driven. I mean, the name of my book is I Compete. I'm a fierce competitor. And in all of our brands today, in all of our industries, our goal is to be number one in every one of our industries. So we don't set mediocre goals. We set goals that are challenging and yet doable. Now, it's not easy. We at Jackson Hewitt, Jackson Hewitt peaked at 6,000 offices. Now I'll say that, in my opinion, they peaked because I left the company. I believe that if I had stayed on, that was 27 years ago, that they would have gone bigger than Block. But they didn't. They only got to 6,000. But if you forecast or try to get to 9,000, it's a lot easier to get to 6,000 than if you say, well, I have 6 offices, we're going to have 200. Then you're never going to get to 6,000. So you need to set audacious goals. You need to be driven to be all you can be. And that's an important part of massive success. And my 12th one and the last one is buy in. You have to buy in, as in, the phrase has really grown over the last 10 or 15 years, and it's called all in. And you only really hear it often during playing poker. And the player says, "I'm all in." Well, that's what you need in your journey. Is you need to be all in, and it isn't dollars. I've learned to disagree with the phrase "skin in the game." Everyone defines skin in the game as cash. Well, that's not true, because for a lot of reasons, but a simple example is, let's say that all the cash you have available to invest is 25,000, and you invest the 25,000, and then you have a multimillionaire that has 5 million in cash, and he invests 100,000, right? So the guy with 5 million cash invests 100,000. The guy with 25,000 cash invests 25,000. Well, who's going to be more committed? Who has more skin in the game? And the skin in the game, to me, is not cash. It's the mental philosophy that I'm all in. I'm giving everything. They got to kill me to stop me. And so buy in, all in, is a critical component of success. And it's sort of like the phrase "burn the boats." And I don't recall in history when the first commander did that. I think it was when they landed in South America. Um, but you can easily Google it. But burn the boats, because when they landed and they were trying to conquer the natives, the officers or the leader did not want them to have an exit, so they couldn't lose. They were dead. They were either going to win or die. They were all going to be or taken prisoner. So burn the boats and all in. And so those are my 12 top 10 reasons that when people say to me now, "Oh, I forgot to say the number one." I'm sorry. Perseverance is number one. Perseverance is number one. Everyone's going to get knocked down. Everyone, and often, and the winners keep going. They always get up, and the losers, they sooner or later, they don't get up, and they'll just stop. And so perseverance, out of all these dozen things that are important to growing a incredible successful business, the most important thing, and perseverance just isn't true in business. It's true in personal relationships, right? Perseverance is the key to success. The number one attribute to success. So so those are the 12. I'm going to let you go and talk to you next week. And again, I welcome any feedback from all of you on either adding or subtracting from my 12. I want to publish a top 10 most important things to be massively successful. Thank you all, and have a great week.